Welcome back to the 150K podcast. I'm your host, Joe Graham, where we help you take your dreams to six figures and beyond. Today, I have with me a special guest. I met him, back in May at a mastermind retreat I did with another friend of ours, Marshall Gillen. His name is Kyle Dillinger. Now, Kyle does a bunch of stuff. He's a real estate expert. He does masterminds, retreats, just a lot of really cool things. But for people that don't know you, give them a little bit of your background, kind of what you're doing and, how you got to this point.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe, for having me on. I'm excited to be here. Like you said, my name's Kyle. I'm from a Midwest town out here in Ohio. It's called Claremont County is where I'm from. Grew up blue collar. I worked construction jobs, landscaping for a while, the whole nine. I've always had a interest in entrepreneurship. I used to flip like energy drinks and wristbands and stuff in school,
Yep.
Things like this. So I always knew I would go down that path eventually. And then finally started to take that journey a few years back when we got into real estate, me and a couple partners. We entered a mastermind and rolled with it. So other than that, I've been super depressed for most of my life. And I got to a point, even after things were getting better, that it just wasn't getting better mentally or anything. So I was desperate to figure some things out. So a couple years ago, actually, 2019, the summer of 2019, I was desperate for change. Came across some content from Gary Vee. He changed my mindset, changed my whole way of thinking in my life. And then I ended up meeting Marshall Gillen, how we just talked about him. I ended up meeting him a couple months later, got into one of his programs, got into self-development, went to one of his retreats. He again changed my mindset and perspective on life. And then I just got into healing inner child work and slowing down, getting out of the rat race and stop focusing so much on business and focusing on myself. Not that business isn't important and not that money isn't important, but I just was not feeling happy or fulfillment in anything I was doing. So I basically took a pause out from life. COVID happened last year. That kind of, it went right with what I was going on. Not to say it was a blessing, but for me, slowing down completely all of last year was a blessing. And so I did that shadow work, did the inner child work. And then God put it on my heart that since retreats changed my life, and I know how impactful because I lived through that experience. I've been to 3 current up to this point. I've been to 3, and each one has completely transformed me. And I've quantum leaped into a higher version of myself. And I'm just so passionate to help others. And this is where I feel like my calling is leading me right now. Is exactly what brought me out of that rut is what I would like to do for others. So that's where we're at currently.
That's amazing. And you talked about a bunch of really cool things there. So let's unpack that a little bit. So you, like you said, you started out Midwest. I'm a Midwest kid as well. You go to the factory, you do the thing, you do the life, and it's what's expected, but it's not really what you want to do.
Right.
And, you said you kind of hit that wall where you didn't really know what you were doing. You were depressed and just, kind of like stuck in the rut. So what was some of the things that got you to have the epiphany of no longer wanting to stay at that place? Because a lot of people are miserable, but they don't change. And on this podcast, we're trying to help people go from where they're at, 6 figures beyond to do whatever they want to do with life. So what helped you? Because you mentioned a few things there, but if you can unpack that a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah, no problem. So basically for me, I just needed that tough love, that swift kick in the ass. And for me, it was Gary. So what happened for me was July 19th, 2019 was the closest I ever was to pulling the trigger and ending. And then the next morning, by the grace of God, I was able to get out of that mindset for that night, put the gun down, went to bed. I got up and I was desperate for change. I was just desperate for change. And I guess it had been like that for a really long time. I just let it drag out and it got to that point. And then I heard Gary say, he said, we have a 400 trillion to 1 chance to even have a life. And that really got me. I was like, oh, wow. Because I'm a numbers guy. I love statistics and I love math. So I was like, damn, it's that rare to have a human life. What am I doing wasting it? And then he said another thing. He said, if we ranked every human being from 1 to 7.8 billion, and you're not 7.8 billionth, like locked in a cave, being tortured, having a shit go at life, then what are you complaining about? And especially if you live here in the US. And when he said that, it was the kick in the ass I needed. I was like, damn, he is right. What the F am I complaining about? Now, at the time, I didn't realize how toxic of a mindset that was. Because while I do love that mindset, it was still a little toxic because what happened was I went from, you know, the super depressed state, not doing anything, to where I was like, oh, I want to do it all. Like getting up at 4 a.m., going to bed at midnight for like a month straight, like just knocking it all out. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm just as unfulfilled as I was a month ago. So it did help me get out of the depression part of it and get my ass in a high gear, so to speak. But it's not necessarily a mindset that you want to keep, you know, for
Yeah,
years.
well, and
and
I
years and
think
years,
that's
but
important. I think that's what happens. We do extremes instead of, you know, doing base hits or making little adjustments all the time. Or like we get this new idea and we throw everything into it and then we exhaust ourselves. We're like, oh, it didn't work. And in reality, we didn't let the process work. So let's talk a little bit more about that because I love this. So with that, you were doing all this stuff, and I'm assuming you went for that month or 2 months and you hit the wall where you're getting exhausted and tired out. So is that when you met Marshall, or was there like a different epiphany at that point of, okay, cool, I don't want to be depressed, but I can't do 4 a.m. to midnight every night because my body just can't sustain that?
Yeah, so it's actually, that is right when I met Marshall. A little bit after that, when epiphany came, I was like, okay, this is too much. It was middle August. August 12th, I believe, is actually when I had the call with Marshall. I'm at the hospital with my then girlfriend at the time. She was going through some pain, and I'm not going to tell her story, but I was in the hospital and I had this call with Marshall, and I was talking with her in the room. I was like, I really, like, I felt a call. I barely known Marshall. I just seen some content. He had this offer to get on a call and talk about life, basically. And I was like, I need to get on this call. And she was not happy about it. Like, she really wanted me to stay in that room and be there with her. And I was just like, I'm sorry, I can't. So I'm dealing with that. I get out to the car. I have this call with, I start crying to this dude I just met, just got on the phone with. I was just like, bro, I'm desperate. I need change. And then I don't even know exactly what we talked about at that point, because there's been so much that he's helped me with since then. But then we started talking a little bit. I ended up selling a pair of my dead stock Jordans that I had at the time, because I didn't have enough money to get into his program. Got into his program, and just which was basically built around building solid habits and routines for self-love. And then the rest was history after that. So and that's basically what my life's been about ever since that call with Marshall in August of 2019. So
yeah, and so that was the point where you started to say, okay, cool, I'm not going to do the Gary, and not that Gary teaches this by any means. I don't want to say something, but I'm not going to do the 4 a.m. till midnight. I'm going to have a balance with it where I can impact people, but still, you know, take care of my mind, my life, my body. You mentioned like shadow work and inner healing. I think most sales professionals and entrepreneurs run into this. We have hidden wounds. So we're going to go prove it to the world or to the man, whatever, that we can do it. We can accomplish things. So how did you address those? And for someone else who might not even know what that means, what do you mean by shadow work?
So that basically means, in my opinion, through my experience, it's just like making friends with your demons, so to speak, which really just ends up being, so a lot of people don't know this. You have a default mode network, DMN, your demon, which is like your default mode for stress, anxiety. When something happens, like you have a default that you click into: flight. What is it?
Fight or flight.
Fight
or flight.
Yeah. Or freeze. And I think there's a fourth one now that I saw floating around. But and so you really have to, well, one, become aware that that's what's going on, and it's actually subconsciously controlling everything you do in your life. And then two, you have to sit with the demons or your default mode and figure out, where did those ideologies and programs come from, which 9.9 times out of 10, it came from your childhood. You are in theta, from which I'm sure you know this, but you're in from ages 0 to 7, which is where your subconscious is being programmed. So any traumatic experiences or anything like that's going to really affect your subconscious in your entire life, because we live our subconscious controls 95% of our day. Right. So yeah, so the shadow work is going deep inside of you, figuring out what it is that made you think and act and be this way. For me, it was like, what made me so stressed and anxious and fearful and sad all the time. And then, so there was a few traumatic experiences, and I had a few traumatic experiences in my adult life also that reiterated some of that programming. But it was basically that. And what got me to even understand and learn about that was the first retreat I went on in 2019 in November with Marshall out in Joshua Tree, where I learned about forgiveness. I was completely unaware that we're carrying around this guilt subconsciously that we let ourselves get to these points, that we let things happen to us like that. So what broke it open for me, the inner child work and learning about all that, was that retreat, and more specifically, like forgiving myself and forgiving others for the things, because what I've learned through the last year and a half doing the work, and what I've learned through personal life experiences, nothing is happening to us, it's all happening for us.
Right.
And so when you really get to live into that mindset and believe that, your entire life changes.
Yeah, no. And I agree. Like, I went to my first mastermind. I met you in May. Another one Marshall had in Whitefish, Montana. And we did a bunch of stuff like carrying the rocks and writing the letters and just starting to do some of that stuff. And I want to talk a little bit more about this. I don't want to give away all the secrets of how he fixes people. That's, we don't want to do all that. But
yeah,
and I'm kind of joking there. But like, with sitting with yourself as a guy, as a doer, atypical, I get stuff done, I have a hard time sitting. So like, how did you, and I don't know if it's the same for you, how do you, like, I can do 8 minutes at a time. Like, I literally time myself. I go to a little park bench, I sit it, and I look at this tree, and I don't do it a lot. I need to do it more, but how do you get yourself into that place or mindset? Because I think a lot of people don't even like to be around themselves, because when there's nothing going on, you're just with you.
Yeah. So for me, I feel like it comes a little bit more naturally. Fact that I was, a nerd growing up, hit puberty late, was picked on every single day of my life. So I naturally became an isolated introvert. So I sat with my thoughts and myself a lot for most of my life. So when I became aware of, meditation and how important it is, and began to get into it, it seemed much easier for me. And from spending a few months living in my car, you're
with yourself.
Thoughts.
Yep.
So I got used to it like that. So but for anybody that's watching this, or maybe I can even help you a little bit with some of this. For me, it was understanding and learning that there's many different forms of meditation. Just staring at a fire is a form of meditation. So you can find things like this, you can research and look up and see what resonates with you. And that helps a lot, because I think most of us automatically think that meditation means like sitting with your legs crossed, and which is a great form of meditation. I actually do that a lot and love it. However, when you're first getting into it, sitting with your legs crossed and trying to do it the way that you've been programmed to think meditation is, probably doesn't work for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So just learning, running is a meditation, going for a walk outside for 20 minutes a day, just practicing and building up to it. Because like you said, we naturally like to jump first into things. So most of us would be like, oh, we got to meditate an hour a day, and try an hour a day. They'll try it for a week, they'll try it for 2 weeks, it doesn't work. Meditation.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
That makes sense with, and just build up with it over time.
Yeah, well, because I do. So in a lot of ways, I guess I do meditate, because I go for walks a lot, and I'm great with that. That's perfect. I can do that. I have a fire pit. I'll stare into the fire pit. I didn't know that was a form of meditation. A lot of times I have a cigar if I'm doing that, and I'm zoned out, not listening to anything, just looking at the flame because it intrigues me. But yeah, sitting down, doing the, where you just sit and stare and be with yourself, that's something I'm working on. But that leads me into another question, which I know you have these, but I think would be good to help the audience. What does your daily routine look like?
So I just changed about 2 months ago, before the retreat, actually. So before, let me go to what it was before. It was waking up. I like to wake up before 9 o'clock, but I really didn't stress myself. I'm a type 1 diabetic, so if I needed more rest, I'm giving myself more rest. But I would wake up, and then I would drink water and journal would be the first thing. And I would stretch before I do anything. And I would make sure that I get that done. And then I would have my time block of like the work that I needed to get done for a few hours. And then after I got done everything I needed to get done, which changed day to day, I would get my workout in the gym and get a 20-minute walk in outside. And then I'm done for the entire day. Now, since I'm in a different stage of the journey, pretty much my daily routine, as long as I journal, drink water, stretch, and go to the gym every single day. And I like to read. As of right now, I'm not reading daily, just because I'm at a spot where I don't want to consume anything right now. I'm in the zone. But if I get those 4 to 5 things done every single day, then that's where my mindset is. Because again, when I first learned about this, I try to go balls to the wall. I try to have, I had no white space in the calendar, back to where the Gary Vee mindset was.
Mhm.
And I try to plan out every single day for the habits, and that just wasn't good for me and my brain, wired for
Right.
anxiety and stress at the time.
Mhm.
So for the water and the stretching and the exercise every single day, and I'm at a point where I'm not forcing my body to get up at a certain time either, which I do highly encourage depending on where you're at. But for
Mhm.
me right now, with like healing my disease, intuition and where my body's at, I'll sleep until my body wakes me up, basically. So
Mhm. Well, and I
that's where my
think
routine's at.
no, I think it's about finding the right balance. I think everyone has to find, okay, what works for you? What are you looking to accomplish with it? Because like I have a daily routine too, but mine's different. Like in the morning, I get up, I drink water. I'm not like as big of a morning person, so I'll listen to a podcast and get focused, go into my day job, and then I do a lot of my stuff in the afternoon. I do my workouts in the afternoon. I do my reading in the afternoon. It just works better for me. Now I know there's studies that say the morning's better, but for right now, I'm working within what works good for me on it.
Yeah, I made the mistake. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut
I
you
know
off,
you're
bro.
good. You're good.
I made the mistake when I first got into this that, oh my gosh, this is what this figure entrepreneur is doing. Fuck, I have to do it like that, or I'm gonna be screwed, or things like this. I got into that mindset for a minute,
Mhm.
which isn't a healthy mindset. And it really kind of messed with me because I was flipping my routine all the time. I'm like, fuck, this one don't feel right, and I want to try it, but I can't do it. So like you just said, finding the balance and what works for you, especially like, we don't know what everybody has. And when people are talking about their routines and habits, like you don't know what disease this person has or illness this person has, or like what they're going through in life, the stress, the anxiety. So it's really more important to just tune into what your intuition's telling you for the routine.
Yeah.
I just do what works for me, and it's working for now. And when it gets to a point where it's not working, I'll change it up.
Yeah. Well, you have to be you. And as an entrepreneur or salesperson, you want to be as genuine as possible. So finding and taking tidbits from people is great, but you still have to kind of get your own path. I get that.
Yeah.
Next question, I know you're all in on this, and you can talk a little bit about what you have coming up. How important has Masterminds been to you for self-help growth, networking, improvement, business, the whole 9 yards? Because I know when I went in May, it just kind of wrecked my world, and now I love them, but I had no clue about them up until that point.
Yeah, bro. So the first one that I got into was February of 2018. It was for the real estate. And I can't say anything shy of it's one of the ultimate game changers in the game of life. You collapse so much time by learning from people that you can only be around in these type of rooms, in these settings, because they're so focused and dialed in on what they have going on in their mission,
Mhm.
that these are the only times you can catch them. Like
Yep.
for instance, we got to go to we got to learn from George Bryant out at the last one. You're not gonna find him in any room you walk into.
Right.
So finding guys that such high level and high impact, and it collapses so many years of learning. It's literally, you can't put a price on it. It's priceless, and I know that's so cliche to say, but it's been so, as of this point, other than like inner child work and self-love, if you take that out of the equation, masterminds and retreats and things like this are like the number one game changer in the game of life. Getting around high level people and collapsing time is like, you can't ask for anything else.
Yeah,
So
no, I'm with you. I think it opened my eyes to the possibility of, because everyone says you're the 5 people you surround yourself with. That's true, but it's the 5 people you choose to allow to influence you, really would be the better way to
yes,
say it. So in
yes,
these groups and masterminds and stuff, like we got to meet George Bryant, we got to learn from Marshall, we got to learn from each other in that whole environment. And then you make lifetime friends that are more on the same level, vibration, whatever term you want to use, that you're on. So you can connect with them, and then you guys can go and collapse time, like you said, faster. So that's great. So I
mm-hmm.
know you have one coming up. So tell us a little bit about it. It's called the All About Me Retreat. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So the All About Me retreat, the main focus, right in the title, you get so caught up in doing everything for everybody else. We get so caught up in building the businesses, making the money, working the overtime, all the things, and 9 times out of 10, we're neglecting ourselves.
Yep.
And what I've learned through the journey and through the experience is you can only love somebody to the capacity that you love yourself. So as much as I wanted to say I loved everybody so deeply, my habits and routines and my self-love said completely otherwise.
Yep.
And that was 100% the truth. So knowing this through personal experience, I know that most people that are out there walking around saying that, and I don't mean any offense to anybody, most people that are walking around saying they love their kids that much, or they love their family that much and their spouse, and they love themselves that much, went through their routine and their habits and the way they talked about it, it would say a completely different story most of the time. And so the All About Me retreat focuses on taking a break from reality. I think Marshall says it best when he calls it a pattern interrupt. So you're getting a pattern interrupt. We're focusing 100% on you. We got, a spa day. We have healing exercises, sound bowl meditations, transformational hike that you've experienced, and that broke me open to my spiritual awakening. I credit to, and busted me open to the inner child healing and the inner work and all of that. We go through that, and we focus 100% on you, make you feel like royalty, so that when you go back to your reality, you have boundaries set, and you're being selfish, but so that you can be selfless. I love that. I love when we talk about things like this, because most people think being selfish is a bad thing, when in reality,
it's a good thing.
It's a good thing, and it's because we're programmed and conditioned a certain way to believe what selfishness is, but really it's just loving on yourself so that you can fill your own cup up to fill up others. And that's exactly what we'll be learning at the retreat.
No, that's good. And just because this clicked in my head, I thought about this, because there's always that, like in the Judeo-Christian areas, like how a lot of the teachings are. And it's funny because they forget the one verse where it says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, if you don't love yourself, you're not loving your neighbor at all. They just forget that part.
Yeah.
It's that reprogram that we talked about.
Yeah.
So where can people connect with you? We're not done, but I do it in the middle always. Where can people connect with you for the All About Me retreat, or if they just want to get in contact with you for some of the other stuff you do?
Yeah, as of right now, just shoot me a DM on either Instagram, which is Kyle Dillinger 3, the number 3, or right on Facebook on my personal profile. There's a pinned post that has all the itinerary and of the retreat and what you can expect. If you would like to read it before you can, otherwise just DM me for the info and we'll chat in the inbox.
Awesome. Very cool. No, I love that. I love that whole, I'm really big into masterminds and learning and growing now. Again, I would highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't tried it. Try it once. If you don't like it, you can reach out to me and Colin and tell us we're stupid. But we know if you actually do it, you're going to be like, holy crap.
100%. You can't, and I'm sure you can attest to this, because the same thing happened to me going to my first retreat or to my first mastermind. You can't even fathom what's about to happen. You can have a thought of like, okay, I expect this. I think it's going to be like this, but actually going through it and being around that environment and being in that space, completely different feeling in that you thought it was going to be. And it's mind blowing and game changing. So
like night and day. I thought I was going to a sales thing and it turned into a whole different, I totally enjoyed it. It was great, but yeah, totally different mindset shift, which is awesome. So this is the one. And I know you listen to my podcast, so you know what question's coming, but I love this question. I ask it of every guest. If you could go back in time as far as you want to go, or go forward in time as far as you wanted to go, you get to be there for 1 year. Now you can talk to anyone you want, whether you met them or not, you can talk to them and you can learn anything you want for 1 year. You get to come back here. Where would you go and what would you do?
That's a tough one. My initial thought was to go forward, but I think I want to go back to, the time before everything got so matrixy. I don't even know what time frame that would be, honestly. But back when there was communities where, everybody was living on each other, like almost like a 70s vibe, but I feel like way before then, because I feel like too many things have gotten brought in and things like this. But I wouldn't go back to time life was simple. I feel like a lot of us are headed back to time. Like you're either going to have the decision to centrics or, times like this. Technically is love, and I feel like that's when love was the best. So I would go back there and learn as much as I can about love and relationships and how to treat people better, which I feel like I do an amazing job at right now, but I'm still unwiring things from programs growing up and things like this. So I would love to go back to that time.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I would say of all my guests, I've had one say they go in the future. Most people either go back and talk to themselves or go back and talk to someone that they're very much like a grandparent or someone that impacted their life really strong. But no, I love that. Going back to that simpler time, like I am a history nerd buff dude. I watch all those old shows like The Last Kingdom or documentaries on like history stuff because I connect with that. Now I think about it, I'm like, I would not want to not have toilet paper or some of the stuff that they had to deal with. But the idea of the community, the family, the survival, that whole thing, it connects really well with me. I like that.
Yeah, I feel like that's more of a natural way of living. Not that I'm against anything we have going on right now. It's not good or bad. It just is. But what my brain can process and feel like it would be like, I feel like I would love that.
Yeah,
I feel like the future would be too much. I don't know. I used to, growing up, I would love things like the Jetsons, like things like that, like floating buildings, you know, flying cars and all that. But now the more I think about it, I'm like, I feel like that just is going to keep dividing humanity more and more and more and get us away from human connections and things like that. So
yeah. Well, here's the funny thing, because someone said this and I saw it recently, because most sci-fi stuff, and I like sci-fi stuff too, ends up being like the world ends and it's horrible and it crashes, messed up. You know, the one sci-fi show that doesn't do that, Star Trek. I'm not a big Star Trek fan, but the one thing about Star Trek that's great is we evolved, we do better, we make mistakes, we're not perfect, but we keep getting better. So that was like
I would choose to live into that timeline then. Now I didn't know that. I'm not a Star Trek guy either.
Yeah.
But I love that because my brain does go that way with everything, like the world would end because that's how sci-fis usually go.
Yeah.
But I know in the quantum world that all possibilities are happening and are just as possible, and they're all happening simultaneously. So I would live into the timeline now where that is the case. We evolve and do better as we go.
Yeah, well, and it's funny. It would make sense that we do that, but we've talked about programming and stuff, and whether it's paganism with like Ragnarok or Judeo-Christian with Armageddon or whatever, everything seems to always be going to that end, that programming there, or like sci-fi even, you know, like a meteor came and attacked and all, but that was like the one. Well, maybe Doctor Who too, because I think on Doctor Who, no, at the end of I've watched enough Doctor Who, sorry. At the end of Doctor Who, it even goes bad. So anyways, we went on a little sci-fi tangent, but that's great. I like it. We went
and we're back.
Dark Ages to sci-fi. So I do like to do a couple of like speed round questions, just fun little answers. Just first thing pops in your head. So are you a mountain or beach person?
Mountain.
Puppies or kittens?
Puppies.
Money or legacy?
Legacy.
And that's the only three questions I can think of at the moment. So
that last one was a tough one. It didn't originally pop up, but the old me would have said money. The new me, and not that I even necessarily care too much about a legacy. Care more about impacting humanity, and whether my name's attached to it or not, you know, amazing, that's great. But maybe I need to live into that a little more and actually care about the legacy.
Well, and I think your heart's right with it, because the people that actually really truly leave a legacy, once you get to a certain point, money's just a tool. You can only go on so many trips, you can only do so many things, you can only buy so many things, and then it's just whatever. But if you can impact a life or a soul or a heart for the rest of their life, whether or not it's to do with money, that to me is legacy. You know, leaving a legacy for my children, or leaving a legacy for maybe someone that's watching this podcast to, you know, they were like you and I and depressed and having issues and all. Now they've been able to go and become a better person. You know, that to me, I think is what I would consider legacy or impact, whatever word you want to put it. That's great.
Yeah, I think, you know, I've heard it talked about a lot. Make the more you can have, which I do agree with. However, at this stage, through like how I make people feel or what I can do for them in that regards, is just, you know, where I lean more towards. And don't get me wrong, I plan on being a a heavy donor in philanthropy with money and helping in that regards too. But there's just something about the personal connection and helping somebody, on that personal level that's just,
Well, yeah,
deeper in my opinion.
no, it totally is deeper, but you have to have money to be able to do anything. So it's a tool,
100%.
or
Yeah.
like fun tokens or whatever you want to call it. You have
Yeah,
to,
I
you
love
can't
that
go
from
and do stuff if you don't have the ability to do it.
yeah, I'm starting to use the Wolf of Wall Street language, and it's just fun coupons.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just have
yeah.
fun coupons now.
I'm a sales guy. It's going to come up, it's just, that just kind of is how that rolls. But, and then even going back to like doing masterminds and stuff, like you mentioned, being in the room with Marshall and with George and different people, you had to pay for the access to be in the room with them because their time is so valuable. And some people might not understand that concept, but if you're able to do that, you're able to, like you said, shrink time, get farther
Mhm.
along, make the connections you need. The last question I always like to ask is, if you had, like, say they forgot about the rest of this episode, we want them to listen to it and know it, but say for some reason they only get to hear this last section, what would you tell to my listeners to encourage them to go on to be the best person they are? Or what piece of advice, if this was all they were going to hear, would you leave for them?
I love that question. What is every temporary, whether you're extremely happy right now, whether you're extremely sad right now, whether you're going through, the worst storm of your life, everything's temporary and it gets better. I'm, through experience, being in the valley of death, so to speak, for so long. That's the one thing that I would go back and tell myself is like, hang on tight, please, because it does get better. Everything's going to work out, exactly how it's supposed to. There's a purpose and a divinity at work that we can't grasp. And it wasn't meant for you to be wherever you're at currently. It's always much bigger and better than we could ever imagine. So everything is temporary. Hang on tight.
I love that. That's amazing. Now, guys, you've heard us talk about masterminds. You've heard us talk about shadow work. You've heard us talk about self-help, making the connections, doing all that stuff. Check Kyle out. Go to his page. Kyle, tell them again your Instagram and your Facebook where they can reach you.
Instagram would be Kyle Dillinger and the number 3. And then Facebook is just Kyle Dillinger, personal page. Shoot me a DM on either one of those and I'll be happy to talk with you.
And check out the All About Me retreat. I am sure it's
please.
going to be, badass and rocking. You'll love it. Thank you, everyone, again, for being on the 150K podcast, where we help you take your dreams to 6 figures and beyond. Please go to Apple and Spotify, like, comment. I read them. It helps me get into the algorithms. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you really, really like this, share this episode with a friend so that more people can hear about, the good things we're doing. And we'll talk to you next time on the 150K podcast. Have a great night.